You are listening to the Guilt Free Spending Podcast, episode number 74. Well, hello there, my friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so literally excited for this episode. This specific episode is one of those that you're going to have to come back to often to refresh into deepen the understanding, because what I'm going to share with you is so profound that it's going to require you to listen a few times. I've had to go over this script in my mind a few times to really make sure I even understood what I was about to share with you. So that's how deep it is. And the reason this is so deep is because of the title. Today we're going to talk about a different flavor of the same life, the truth about change. This is a concept that I've been chewing over after working with a variety of people with different backgrounds, couples, single parents, and single women. And change seems to have a pattern in different people, the same pattern. Some people, it's more accentuated. In other people, it's less obvious, but it seems to be the same pattern. So I wanted to bring that to your attention so that you're not being fooled, because your brain will try to fool you into thinking you are changing, you are up-leveling your skills, your life skills. But if you're not vigilant, you will miss it. And that is why having a coach is amazing, because I get to see angles and corners that you don't see. And that's normal. That's absolutely normal. You cannot be in the room and see yourself through the window. You always need someone else to look at you from the outside to tell you what you're not seeing. And so I do the same thing. I have my own coach and more than one coach that I work with, because I need someone else to see when I can't see. Even if I try the hardest, I won't see it. That's human nature. And so, yes, we're going to talk about different flavors of the same life and the truth about change. This episode is very dear to me because today I'm going to be very straightforward. I don't know if you've thought over the last 73 episodes that I am very forward, but today, more than ever, it's necessary that I speak to you directly so that I don't give you opportunities, or I would say your brain. It's not really you. I don't give your brain opportunity to say, oh, I'm confused. Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure you're talking to me. So that's what we're going to talk about. But before we dive in, I want to tell you about this amazing experience that I'm offering online on Zoom. It's a masterclass that I'm teaching how to spend your money guilt-free. It is happening today. So if you're listening to the podcast and you're like, oh no, it's not too late, because it'll be this afternoon. So make sure you go to greenwealthlegacy.com/confidence to sign up. During this class, I am really going to teach you 3 powerful skills. There are so many money skills that you need to learn, but I want to hone them or to zone in on 3 skills that are going to be essential for you to manage your money from this moment. From the moment you listen to the class, to watch the class, and you interact with me, you're going to know exactly how to implement those 3 skills so that you can see the changes in your relationship with money right away. One of those skills is taking yourself seriously. I know that sounds so simple, but I promise you, this is one of the things that women struggle with the most. And so we're going to tackle that, and I'm going to show you exactly how you can honor yourself, respect yourself, take yourself at the utmost importance, so that when you say what you want, first of all, that you honor yourself enough to say what you want. And then when you do say what you want, then you go and execute it, because no one will save you except you. So you need to know how to spend your money guilt-free. And that's what we're going to talk about. So go to greenwealthlegacy.com/confidence to sign up. And I cannot wait to see you tonight. All right, my friend. In the time of recording of this episode, we are in February. We're still in February. I'm recording this for March. During the month of March, we are going to talk about emotions. And it's just the beginning of the conversation. So I think this episode is so powerful because it kind of coincides with the month of March that we're talking about emotions, which are the most important thing you want to be able to master so that you master your finances. And this is what the missing piece, right? Your emotional world dictates how you use your money. And so when we think about our lives, we are interacting with other humans every single day. We're interacting with ourselves every single day. There are emotions that are being exchanged, that we're feeling, that we're passing along. And we have not been taught how to deal with those things, what to do with emotions. A lot of people think emotions are dumb, but they're not. They're one of the most precious things that we were gifted at birth as a human race, because animals do not have emotions and humans do. Very important. Emotions are the language of the body, of the heart. And when you don't have a language to express what's happening, it's really hard and you feel very isolated and you feel very lost. So I want to start by talking about what happens in a relationship when it comes to emotions. Whether you are in a relationship with yourself or with a partner or a sibling, a friend, a relationship involves thoughts you have about someone. So you are in a relationship with yourself, you have thoughts about yourself, right? In that relationship, there are expectations. You have expectations for yourself. When you gain consciousness, when you become an adult, when you start to realize what you're capable of, what the world has to offer you, you start to set expectations. Babies, children don't really set expectations because they're not really aware of what's happening. But as adults, we do. So in a relationship, we set expectations. And when those expectations are not met, which usually they won't be met, because here's the thing. As humans, we've been trained to have expectations for people in our lives, for ourselves, but we don't voice them. So when you are in a relationship with someone or with yourself and the expectations are not voiced, you assume your partner will know what they're supposed to do to make you happy. And you expect them to do those things so that you can be happy. And then those expectations are not met because they won't. First, your partner doesn't know what you're thinking that will make you happy. And then also what you want them to do may not be something they want to do. And so you will have expectations that are not met. When a human being has unmet expectations, it becomes disappointment. That is what disappointment is. Unmet expectations. So a relationship with yourself is the same thing. You have expectations about yourself, but when you're not clear as to what those expectations are, what you're supposed to do so that you can function at the highest version of yourself, you will have unmet expectations within yourself. And you will feel disappointed over your relationship with yourself, over your life. Okay? So that is the foundation. So this disappointment is not processed because you don't even realize that's what you're running on. You're just thinking your partner isn't making you happy. You're just thinking your partner isn't doing his or her part. You're just listing all the things they're missing. And you do the same thing to yourself, my friend. You list all the things, even if you're not writing them down, you're tracking them in your brain. Your mind is tracking all the things you're not doing that you're missing, right? This lends into frustration because since we're not taught to communicate, to express, here's what I really want to happen. And also, because I said this is what I want, if you don't do it, that's all right, because I can validate myself. I first and foremost fulfill myself. And then whatever someone else brings on the table is just an added bonus. But I don't depend on that for my emotional state to be happy or to be unhappy. I have a client who told me I'm married. I should not be doing this by myself. But here is the truth about this. Whether you're married or single, you are an individual. As an individual, you're responsible for your emotional world. You're responsible, 100% responsible for how you feel. No one will ever take that responsibility. As much as we want to, we really don't. Because if someone else is responsible for how you feel, you're a victim your whole life, because they could just decide to make you unhappy, or they can decide to make you happy all the time. But you really want to be the one in control of that. And good news, you are. No one else is. So whether you're married or single, you are responsible for your emotional well-being, your emotional life, your emotions, your feelings. You create them through the sequence, is what I call it, where you have circumstances, which is life, things you can control, your past, people in your life, and then you have thoughts about those things, and that those thoughts are what create your emotions. So your own thoughts are what generates your emotional world. So you're responsible for your emotions. So when you have this disappointment from the unmet expectations that were never voiced, this disappointment, because it's in process, it gets trapped in your body. It turns into frustration. Frustration is a state of disempowered anger. So you're angry at a situation, but you feel disempowered to improve the situation. And that is because the disappointment from the unmet expectations means that your partner hasn't met your expectations. So you don't have control over them. And so that leads you into anger, and that is frustration. It's a different level of anger, but it's because you don't have control over your partner to change them into who you want them to be, so that you can feel happy, so that you can feel fulfilled, because we do everything so that we feel a certain way. And so you think that your partner is the one that has to make you happy. And so when that doesn't happen, you go through this level of disappointment, and then it turns into frustration. And then when frustration festers, because it will, it becomes resentment. Resentment now is not anger towards your partner. Resentment is towards you, because over time, the disappointment is in process, the frustration accumulates, and you guys are still together, like even with yourself. You're still going through life, and you start to notice that your partner doesn't care. You start to think they don't care about you, because they're still moving on with their lives. They're still doing things. They're coming in, going out. And all of a sudden, you start to realize, I wish I could move on with my life the way you are moving on, and not care the way you don't care. So you start to resent yourself for missing out on the not caring attitude. You see? And these trifecta of emotions is where most people live on a day-to-day basis. Whether you're married or you're single, because when you're single, this is the same process that you go through with yourself. If you don't notice how you're not meeting your own expectations, you land into disappointment. And from disappointment, you travel into frustration, because you think things are out of your control. You can't change the expectations that you set for yourself. You don't realize that your thoughts are it's what really creating all this. You're attributing this lack of power to circumstances, to life, to inflation, to a bad boss, to a life, a tragedy that happened in your life. And so when that frustration festers, because you still haven't caught the source of it to solve for it, you land into resentment towards yourself. And so if you think about it, if this is the emotional home you're living from, remember, there are so many different emotions. And when I say remember, I've talked about this multiple times on the podcast. I really want you guys to get good at emotions. So in the month of March that we're going to talk about emotions, we actually have a workbook in Money Academy that is explaining, detailing about 100 and plus emotions. I think about 112 emotions. But I was listening to Brene Brown in one of her books, and she was saying that there's a study that was done, and they had about 267 emotions that they studied to kind of identify different things about those emotions. So there are a whole slew of emotions that you can investigate so that your vocabulary about emotions can broaden. But these three emotions are very familiar to the average person because of the process that I just described. So if this is where you're coming from, this is your emotional home, because here's the thing. On a day-to-day basis, when things happen throughout our day, we go home emotionally to the place that we're familiar with. It's not comfortable. It's the place that we're familiar with. So if you're living in this trifecta, disappointment, frustration, resentment, and you're wanting to change, if you don't acknowledge that this is where you're coming from, you're going to want to change from this place. There is nothing constructive, positive, scalable, sustainable that is created from this trifecta, from disappointment, frustration, and resentment. So if you wake up and you decide, okay, I'm ready to tackle my finances, I'm ready to face my money and to build a better relationship with my money. If as a couple, you guys decide, okay, we're ready to work with Green Wealth Legacy. We're going to attack our finances and we're really going to get it together this time. We're tired of carrying debt around and not knowing how to manage money. And we want to build wealth. We want to be able to plan for our retirement and not ever have to worry about it. So we're going to start working on the money. Okay? But you don't realize that your emotional home is part of these three emotions that I just described to you. You're going to start to take actions towards the change. You're going to create a budget. You're going to implement maybe a couple of times. But along the way, you're going to hit a wall. And if you're in a relationship, you're going to blame the other person for the wall, especially if you're working on the money together. I see this so many times. You're going to blame the partner for the slow process, the slow progress. When you hit this wall, you're going to think it's your partner. If it's just you in the situation, you're going to feel confused and not sure why you're not making progress. Now, here is where I want to explain this part first before we move on to the rest of the conversation. As humans, we experience discomfort all day long, every day. I know people are comfortable talking about the comfort zone is where you are doing these things that are not really profitable to you. But I don't call that a comfort zone because you're not comfortable when you're living a mediocre life. And when I say mediocre, I'm not trying to be insulting. I mean mediocre. When you talk about there's an excellent level of life, and then there's a mediocre, and then there's average, and then there's below average, right? Mediocre is what's next right before excellent life. Excellent is when you're tapping into your potential. You're really putting yourself out there and really seeing what you're capable of. And you're never listening to someone telling you no. You're continuing to grow. That's excellence. That's your potential. You're tapping into it. That is what I call the comfort zone. Because while you're pushing yourself and really proving to yourself what you're capable of, continue to go to the next level and the next level of growth, your emotional world expands and you start to build so much pride in yourself. But that is not where you are when you are in the mediocre life where you're doing the same thing over and over and over. And you are not comfortable there. So that's not a comfort zone. Okay. So if you are in your current mediocre life and you say, I want to change, you will experience a level of discomfort. This is very good. Good news. Growth equals discomfort. But what I wanted to establish is there are two types of discomfort. There is a positive discomfort and there's a negative discomfort. The negative discomfort is what people call the comfort zone. When you have positive discomfort and negative discomfort. The negative discomfort is The positive discomfort is what takes you towards your growth. It's what lands you in growth, right? That's the growth you're achieving. You're like setting up systems for your finances. You are changing your habits. You're doing things different. You're thinking differently. That's positive growth because it's taking you to tap deep into your potential. It's going to give you different results than what you have currently. Negative discomfort is where you are before you say yes to the change, yes to growth. You are doing the same thing over and over and over, and you're yielding the same results. That is the familiar zone. In the familiar zone, you're doing the same things over and over, in and out, day in, day out, and you're creating the same results. This is what your brain is familiar with. Which means in this familiar zone is where you have this trifecta of emotions: disappointment, frustration, resentment. Your brain is used to you going back to this home every single day. When anything happens, that's where you go to. Think about it. The arguments you have with your partner come from either one of these emotions. There's disappointment that triggers an argument, or frustration, or resentment. And then any other version of a different emotion. Okay? And your brain is really good. Our brain is really good at just repeating the same patterns. So if you're living off of these emotions, and then it will add a few more here and there, but it's just to keep the loop going. So it will do just a different flavor of all of these emotions, and it keeps you in the same world. So when you're living in that familiar zone, and then you decide that you want to change, so you're trying to go towards the positive discomfort, great news. Growth is available. But here's what I want to bring your attention to. You're going to start taking action, as I mentioned, and you're going to start seeing some little bit of change. Like, oh yeah, this is happening. I'm really doing this, right? And that's what's motivating you to keep going. But when you hit a wall, like I said, you're going to be in a relationship. You're going to think it's your partner's fault that you're hitting a wall. Or you're going to think you're confused, because if you're alone, you have no one else to blame but yourself. And so in blaming yourself, you're not going to try to investigate what's really happening. You're going to just feel confused, and then you're going to stall out your progress. But if you think about it, this is why change is so difficult. But because we're having this conversation, you're no longer going to be a victim to your brain, because this stalling moment, this wall that you're hitting, this is your brain resisting the change. This is your brain protesting this desire you have. I have an episode that is a beautiful beginning to this conversation. It's episode 30. Is the box that your brain has built. Something like that. It's about a box that your brain has built. If you listen to that episode, I take you from the moment you're young until when you get to that time in your life where you have an awakening, you're ready to change, and then you start to change. And now I'm taking you from that moment till you find out the truth about how to actually change. Your brain is protesting the change, the new actions. You create a budget. You want to live through the budget, because this is one of the biggest challenge people have, following through with the spending plan. It's really good to put numbers on the spreadsheet, but then to actually live through those numbers is what's really challenging. And we teach a beautiful way to actually follow through that you don't have to fight and argue with yourself. But first, I want you to see what's happening inside your mind. Your brain is resisting. And so what it does is it just offers you a different flavor of your mediocre life. You think you're changing because it feels like you're taking different paths. It feels like you're going through different routes. It feels like you're navigating a different path, right? but it isn't actually happening. You're taking the same neural pathways. Because remember, you're coming from this emotional home of disappointment, um, frustration, and resentments. If you haven't processed those emotions, if you haven't identified those emotions, like brought them up to light and explored them to see where they come from, how you deal with them, what's the message to receive from them, then your brain is just giving you a false narrative that you are changing, that you are making progress, that you are growing. And yes, you are experiencing discomfort, which is why you believe that you're changing, because you've heard it, right? That growth equals discomfort. So if you feel uncomfortable, that means you're growing. So this is working. It is working, and also it isn't. Because if you're being fooled by your brain, and you don't see it, you will be spinning in circles all around. And you could be doing this for years. I've seen this happen so many times. You can even be seeing a coach. But if you haven't cleaned up your emotional home and decided to create a new emotional home, that means you're operating from the same home to change. Change requires a new environment. Change requires a new set of thoughts. But if you're coming from these emotions, they're just helping you generate the same thoughts. 95% of who we are, first of all, is a recollection of the past and is a repetition. Your brain loves that. That is like the perfect environment for your brain to feel comfortable, familiar. So what I want you to do is to identify what is your emotional home. I've given you 3 emotions that most people live off of. And then there's there are varieties or different versions of these emotions. You need to identify what is yours. Sometimes you have the resentment, and then there could be some level of anger, because frustration is anger, but real anger is more like, I can do something about it, but it's there. You want to identify what is your emotional home. You want to identify what is your partner's emotional home. So this is when you're going to need humility and honesty. Humility to recognize that your brain has been fooling you. And here's how you know your brain has been fooling you. You keep getting the same results as before, even though you think you've changed. You've done some things that should be different, but you keep getting the same results. Results like money still feels hard. Paying off the debt. In fact, the debt is accumulating. You're getting more debts. How is it possible? Right? Or you still feel confused about putting everything down on paper and then executing it. You're still keeping money in your mind instead of being on a specific plan on paper and then following through. If you have any of these symptoms, you're the same. You have not moved on yet. Nothing has gone wrong, because you need to be able to see this before you move away from this. So that's why you need to identify, wait, where am I coming from? So one of the things that we do in Money Academy, and this is what I'm always emphasizing, is to build awareness. You can't solve a problem if you don't know where it comes from. You can't put a GPS location in a destination in the GPS if you don't know where you are. But when we want to change, we rush to the change, which is great. We're excited about it. We forget to focus on awareness, identifying where we come from first. So when you start working on your finances, and as a couple, you have even more, I want to say, hurtful arguments, it is definitely a sign that your brain has been fooling you. Because you're supposed to be changing, implementing these new money skills, but somehow money feels more complicated than before. And your relationship with your partner is more, I don't even know what the word is. It feels more fragile than before. This is worth you sitting down and identifying where you're coming from. I teach this framework, the ILR framework. You want to identify which is the I in the framework. What is my emotional home? So here is how you identify your emotional home. I've talked about it multiple times now, so I'm going to give you the formula. It's very simple. You're going to go through every single day for 7 days straight. Ask yourself 3 times a day, how do I feel? And remember when I told you about the emotional vocabulary, you need to be, this is what they call being emotionally granular. When you know the names of all different emotions. So when you ask yourself, how do I feel? You want to identify that emotion in your body with the word that corresponds to that emotion. So you may have to Google it if you can't figure out what the right word is. You will know how it feels. Try to identify how it feels, and that's what's going to guide you to decide. Is it anguish? Is it anxiety? Is it fear? Is it panic? Is it boredom? Is it despair? Is it hopelessness? Is it despondency? Which is it? Write that down. Then the second time during the day, it could be noontime, it could be in the afternoon. Ask yourself again, how do I feel? Write it down. In the evening, how do I feel? Write it down. It's not complicated. You don't have to write a list of emotions. You just need one. You do that 3 times a day for 7 days. That's your prescription. I just said 3 times a day, and I had a recollection of my pharmacy tech days when I would read the doctor's prescription, TID, 3 times a day. So there, I'm your emotional doctor, and I'm giving you the prescription. 3 times a day for 7 days. This is the antibiotic you have to take. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm taking this to the next level. So this is what you need to be doing. And then after the 7 days, you're going to go back. Oh, and another thing, before you even go through the 7 days, make sure you don't take this so seriously that you have to be sitting there and reading those emotions every day. Just write them down and walk away. I don't want your brain to catch on to what you're doing. If you pay too much attention to this exercise, your brain is going to start to analyze, and then you're going to lie to yourself. You're going to ask yourself how you're doing, and you're going to tell yourself like, good, fine, great, happy, lies. None of those are emotions. Happy is an emotion, but most people like to say happy, but it's not actually true. Let's be very specific. So don't pay too much attention. Just do the thing like a robot. I promise this works. Write it down, walk away. Don't write it down somewhere where you're trying to analyze. What does this mean? Does this mean I'm an unhappy person? No. We're just tracking. It's just tracking. There's no judgment. There's no judgment. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to even look good. You just need to track. That's it. Okay? No attachment to anything, because you don't have no idea what it's going to yield. So if you mess with the data by lying, which I call that lying. If you are asking yourself, how do I feel? And you feel anger in that moment, and you feel ashamed to feel anger. Tell yourself you feel happy, and you write happy. Your brain, you just lie to yourself. That's distrust. That's like eroding your self-trust. That's a different topic for a different day. Don't do that. Okay? So you do that 7 days, no judgment, no expectations. After the 7 days, you're going to go back to everything you tracked, and I want you to notice the emotions. See if there's a pattern. Remember, emotions have families. So you may feel like, oh, I don't have this same emotion multiple times, but do you have something close, a cousin, a sister, something related to that emotion? Then notice your patterns. This is when it's going to help you identify, oh, so this is where I go when life happens to me. Right? This is important. Once you know this, now you know that this is where you're operating from every day. Hence the reason why change feels challenging. Hence the reason why your results are not changing yet. This is so good. This is so good because once you see this, you can't unsee it. You're going to have the deepest desire to now do the second part of the framework, which, remember, the first part was identifying, which is what we did with this exercise. The second part is let go. So now that you see the emotional home that isn't serving you, you can be grateful. And I always say let go gently, firmly and gently, because you want to be grateful. Like, okay, you held me all these years and I appreciate it. Also, goodbye, because the results you're creating are not giving me what I want. So I want something else. I want to feel differently so I can create something different. And this is how your relationship with yourself starts to change. And this is how your relationship with your partner starts to change. This work, you want to do this individually, even if you're in a relationship. Because once you identify your personal emotional home and you let go of the emotions that are not serving you, you become, it's like your connection to yourself deepens. And when it does, you're going to treat your partner so much better. Remember, the disappointment and frustration and resentment is what's intoxicating your relationship. But if you let that go, you start to have a pure, hearty, fun relationship with yourself and with your partner. So once you let it go, and that's all you need to do, say, I'm just gonna have to let you go. I'm gonna have to move and get a new home. I want to create a new home. And that's what R comes in, is renovating, which is bringing in emotions that you want to live from, that you want to operate from. Because we do everything we do because of how we feel. So if you're feeling negative emotions, you will create results that don't serve you, especially if you don't process those negative emotions. Negative emotions don't mean bad emotions. They just mean negative charge. They're just very heavy vibration. They're very heavy vibration emotions that just drop, make your body super heavy. And that is why they're negative. They're negative charge, chemically speaking. But if you're operating from them and you don't know how to process them, how to use them, which the average person doesn't, it's a process. You have to educate yourself on how to do that, and then you have to practice that over and over. Then what you're creating is that mediocre life, and you're trying to achieve the excellent life, tapping into your potential, moving towards your comfort zone. So once you let them go, you're going to bring in the emotion. So you can decide, do you want to be a joyful person? Do you want to be in gratitude every day? Do you want to feel happy every day? Do you want to feel compassion? Which emotions do you want to be in? Which emotions you want it to be your home where you go to throughout the day? So you can go through that list of emotions again and pick 3. You don't want too many because that's going to be challenging for you to keep track of. It's just like with values. You don't want too many values. You want keywords that when you say it really gives you like a powerful sentence that identify what you stand for, what your standards are. So 3 emotions for your emotional home is the perfect combination. So for me, I come from compassion, joy, and gratitude. Like, I worked so hard at bringing these emotions in my body, staying with them, building capacity to have them stay and expand my identity to hold space for them. And so that when life throws, when things go sour on a day-to-day basis, I find myself back to either gratitude, joy, or compassion, or one of them. It doesn't mean I'm not experiencing the whole slew of emotions. It just means that this is my home. This is what I go to. And from there, I can operate at a high level. So if you are in a relationship and you're ready to tackle your finances and you start to take action and you find that you're hitting a block, which means you're probably not doing your money dates every week. or when you do, you're arguing and it doesn't end well. And if you're still blaming each other for any type of results you have created in your life, that means you're still not reaching for that excellent level of life. And that's okay. So this episode is what's going to guide you in how to solve for that. You have to take yourself seriously enough to recognize this is the work. Because you're going to need, and here's why I say you need humility. Because your ego is the reason why you're not seeing this work is needed. Your ego doesn't want you to change. It's very happy where it is. But you want to change. You want to have an aligned relationship in your relationship with yourself, with your partner, with your finances. You want to move on to wealth building instead of being stuck in this space of money management is still a skill I'm learning. You got to move on to the next thing. So you're going to need humility to override your ego and recognize as much as I want to change and I'm trying, my brain will be the obstacle. So I've got to neutralize that obstacle. And this is how you do it. I've walked you through all of the steps. You have to identify your emotional home. You have to let it go. And then you have to renovate with new emotions that will power you, fuel you towards the growth. Your brain is going to tell you that the reason you don't want to change is because you're afraid of the discomfort. But remind yourself that you're already uncomfortable. There's no comfort when it comes to life. It's either the discomfort of not growing or the discomfort of growing. What's so powerful about the positive discomfort is that you are actually moving towards your destination, your desire. So that's what's so fun. The comfort comes from the idea that I am giving it my all. And as humans, we are wired for growth. So when you're giving your all to an endeavor, you feel so fulfilled. It could be uncomfortable emotionally because you're in the cognitive dissonance, which is you're holding the old version of you and the new version of you into the same hand, and it feels really hard. But it's so fun when you know you are moving towards your vision. This is the work, my friend. And I'm going to share with you why it's hard for you to see this. This whole thing I just went over with you. Because we want to change so badly, but our ego is standing in the way. Our brain and ego are standing in the way, right? Which our ego is really living in our brain. But your mind is also the same place where you're going to create this level of awareness and to see it and then to move away from it. But here's why it's almost impossible for you to see this unless you really spend time in self-reflection, which is what I've been doing a lot lately because I am truly working on losing 20 pounds between now and June. I really want to lose 20 pounds on purpose. I've lost weight before in my life, and sometimes I did it on purpose, but this time the way I'm doing it is so different. So I am spending so much more time in self-reflection. I am seeing myself in slow motion is the most amazing thing. But this is a skill that I've been building for years. And this is the reason why I'm telling you that you won't be able to see this if I don't point it out to you. And I still need to see my coach after I do all the work that I do myself. You are working off of autopilot, automatic behaviors. Remember, I said that earlier, 95% of your behaviors are automatic from the past, are repetitive. When you're coming from that, that means you're dormant in your own life. You're just doing the same things over and over and over. When you decide to change, you have a level of awareness. That's great, but it requires a deeper layer of that awareness for you to actually move towards the change. And if you don't identify your emotional home, you miss that huge space in your awareness level that you're just going to keep operating, but you're operating from automatic. And that's why you won't see it, because you're still hypnotized. So now I've given you the steps that are going to allow you to wake up. Because once you can identify your emotional home, you are awake to your life, your presence. You're no longer dormant. One of the reasons you struggle with identifying emotions is because you're dormant. You're just familiar with how good or bad you feel, but you're not awake enough to know whether it's despair, happiness, hunger, fear. If you don't have those identifiable, those adjectives, that's because you're still sleeping, and that's okay. If you do the exercise that I gave you to do, it will wake up your prefrontal cortex. It would awaken you to your life, and you will be present. And if you do that for 7 days, you're creating awareness, awakeness for 7 days. And then we're going to continue to work on that and stay in awareness. This is the work, my friend. You can't be in the room and see yourself through the window. It's very important that you sit down and do this work for yourself, for your relationship with yourself, for your relationship with your partner. Okay, I think I've given you everything I've got for this work, for you to take it to the next level, so that whatever wall you're hitting one right now, you can break through and move to the next level. And this is what's going to make you different. You, the listener of this episode, is going to make you different than anyone who's not listening, because now you know why, even though you think you're changing, you're not. You're just creating the same flavor of a different flavor of the same life. We want a different life, a different identity. So go do the work. And if this, what I said throughout this episode, anything resonated with you, listen, it's work. I'm not going to lie to you. It's work. Your relationship with money demands that you do this work, because the results you're creating right now are not satisfactory, right? So you have to be willing to do the work. And I'm inviting you to do this because it's so worth it. Remember, it's discomfort either way, but the positive discomfort is so much more fun. It's not actually as uncomfortable as the negative discomfort. So if anything of what I said resonated with you and you want to take it deeper, you want a mentor, you want a team to go through this work so that you can create wealth from an abundant place and a place of alignment where you're mastered yourself, you're mastering your finances, I want to invite you to schedule a free consultation with me when you go to our website, greenwealthlegacy.com. I want to invite you to take yourself seriously enough to know this work, you're worth it. I see you in the next episode, my friend. Take care.